the publishers.
Oh yes, of course.
Such a response for the people. Yeah.
Oh yes, of course I did. Well, I don't want to make it sound as well. I had been told that, you know, by my agent and by friends, by French friends, that I would probably encounter publishers and editors that had brought out my books. I'm quite aware of how many books of mine are in print in France and how many editions, because I received, you know, detailed reports from my agent, and I knew, you know, that in France especially, as say, in contrast to Italy or Germany or England, there would be a greater interest in my writing by people in the business, people in the industry, rather than merely fans, readers. Well, my relationship with the United States has always been a very bad one. It has always seemed to me that I was about to be arrested by the American police for some obscure reason. And perhaps that's because of reading Kafka's The Trial. That book influenced me very much, you know, where someone is arrested for a crime and he is never told what crime he has committed. And in Berkeley, we were very radical. And there's a Bob Dylan song, let's see, he says, whatever it was you were doing, you don't know what it was, but the police say you're doing it again, something like that. And I always had that feeling, and it was a symbol of my sense of alienation from my own country's culture. I mean, they didn't read my books, and I didn't like them, and I didn't feel any affinity, any relatedness to my neighbors and the population in general. I remember one time my fear of the police was so great that whenever I saw a parked police car and I was driving along, I would ask my wife to stop our car and I would surrender to the police on the spot to whatever crime they wanted to accuse me of. My fears became greater during the Nixon administration. Because at that time there really was some basis for people like me to worry. After Nixon was deposed, my fears went away completely, and I have a sense now that the United States is a permissive, intolerant nation. As far as my reputation in the United States, I don't expect ever to have any reputation in the United States except well, the police once told me that I was a crusader, and they had no use for crusaders. But unfortunately, they didn't tell me what I was crusading for. I was afraid to ask what it was I was a crusader for. And they told me that if I did not get out of the county, I would be shot in the back or worse some night. And I merely took their advice. I left the United States and went to Canada for a while. But I never found out what I was crusading for. It may have had something to do with my writing, it may have had something to do with my lifestyle, or a combination of both, but I was too afraid of the police to ask what it was I was doing. Is that at all responsive? This attitude of mine shows up in my recent novel, A Scanner Darkly, where a narcotics agent winds up reporting on himself, turning over information on himself to his higher-ups. The paranoia of the Nixon period was so great by the government and also by the counterculture, the Berkeley people. Anybody like me who grew up and was part of the Berkeley counterculture became a marked man during the Nixon administration. It is impossible to tell how much of our fears were justified. I mean, there were illegal entries. My house was broken into. My files were blown open. My papers were stolen. We never found out who did it. My attorney said it was the government. There was no doubt that it was the government. But what they were looking for, I don't know. What they thought I was doing, I don't know. I don't even know if it was the government. But there were many such illegal entries, and an experience like that tends to make you very paranoid, you know, that you are suspected of some crime. But like in Kafka's The Trial, they never told me what it was I had done. They just told me I was a crusader, and they didn't have any need for crusaders. And the fact that I was an intellectual and a writer only made me more suspicious in their eyes. You've got to take into account that in the United States, to be an intellectual, to be a writer, is to wear a sign on your back saying, I am an enemy of the state. I mean, it is something that is hard to understand, I think. There is such an anti-intellectual attitude in America. It's incredible, the suspicion that the authorities have of what they used to call eggheads. Well, they used to call intellectuals eggheads. It was a term of derision. And the term originated in Nazi Germany. Most people don't know this. I happen to know this because I did a lot of research into Nazi Germany for my novel, Man in the High Castle. The term egghead was used by the Sturmabteilung, SA. It referred to the fact that when they beat up people who were defenseless, their skulls cracked so readily against the pavement that the term egghead was evolved by the Sturmabteilung, and that term was carried over into the United States without any knowledge of its origin. However, the fact that that is the origin of the term egghead, which is the term used for American intellectuals, that origin tells a great deal about the kind of people who would use such a term.